We start a new series, a very short series, entitled Analog Christians Seeking the Abundant Life in the Digital Age. It's going to be short, just a few weeks, and then we're going to jump back into part 27 of a 1,000-part series going through the Gospel of Matthew. It'll be the last part, and we finish it up. But we wanted to start here and kind of deal with something that is incredibly important. And also, it'll be a little different than usual in that if you come to South Valley for a long time, you know we usually just pick a book of the Bible and then kind of walk through it verse by verse. This is going to be one of the more practical series that we do. Like, this is going to be extremely practical. And it's dealing with this issue, is how do we as Christians live in the digital age? Now, for the first week, fair warning, we're going to talk a lot about the family unit and parenting. However, don't think that if you don't have kids or you had kids and they're gone, like it's not going to be relevant or important. We're all in the digital world. And so we know families, we know kids, we have grandkids, we have nieces and nephews. One day you might have kids, and if you have zero, absolutely, like there's no children in your life any way, shape, or form, we'd love to get you serving in children's ministry. So you sign up for that. The world has been radically transformed by technology, like in a very, very short matter of time. And for the most part, we've just kind of had it happen to us, and it's rare that we stop and intentionally think through, how are we as Christians living in light of the digital age? The problem is, it's very difficult as a Christian to know how to live in the digital age because there's no there's no verses that talk about the internet. Like you don't get to go to like Paul's epistle to the church in Silicon Valley and where he gives you tips on how much social media is good, how much is bad. Like, it's just not there. So what you have to do is you have to exercise something called chokhmah, which is the Hebrew word for wisdom. And wisdom is incredibly important. The Bible talks a lot about chokhmah. And here's the foundation to wisdom. Wisdom asks the question, how does the world operate and how do I live well in that world? How does the world exist and how do I live well in it? Or a better way to say it might be, how did God design the world and how do I live well within that design? Now, important to note, wisdom does not tell you like absolute black and white answers that are true all of the time. They speak in generalities. So, for example, in the scriptures, it says that if you obey your mother and father, you will live long. Now, that is generally true because God has designed the world in such a way that where there's healthy family units, healthy communities, healthy relationships between mom and dad, that they're not going to be these severe problems. However, there are people who love their parents and honor them and die early in car crashes. So that's not as if there's some, well, they must, they violated some principle. No, wisdom says this is the way the world generally operates. This is the way God designed the world. There's also sin and all these other factors, but when you submit yourself to God's design, then you will likely flourish. But it's not a 100% guarantee. And so you have to ask, like, how do we be wise? How do we act wisely in the digital age? And the other thing about wisdom is that it's never going to give you wisdom says 2 hours of TV a day is okay. It's going to give you this idea of how you ought to interact with media. And then you have to take wisdom and make practical applications for yourself. So that's what we're going to try to do, is how do we, as Christians, approach the digital age we now live in with chokhmah, with wisdom. Now, the foundation for today is the foundation of all sort of Jewish theology, the center point of the Hebrew Scriptures, Deuteronomy 6:4-5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. This is like the center point. There is one God, and you ought to love him with the sum total of your being. Now, what's incredibly relevant for us, though, is what it goes on to say right after that. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Super repetitive, but there's a point here. Everything that God is going to teach in the law, in the scriptures, all this stuff, what are we to do with it? We shall put it on our heart. We shall teach it to our children. But then there's this list. Man, you're going to write it on your doorsteps. You're going to talk about it in the house. You're going to talk about it when you're walking around town. You're going to talk about it when you rise and when you go to sleep. So what's the big idea there? The big idea is that there is absolute integration of God's truth at every level of the individual and the family unit. You are speaking of God and His ways and His goodness and His love at all levels. When you're walking to school, when you go to bed, when you wake up, you're going to write it on your doorstep, on your doorpost, so that you don't forget it when you go to work. So it's complete integration of the faith into the family's life. Now, what Americans and kind of our culture is really good at is compartmentalizing. And so we typically approach things like, okay, I have my church life here, and then, we got soccer right here, and we got karate right here, and we do this, and then there's my kids' education, and then there's future for college here, and there's like compartments, and Christianity begins to take up one of the compartments. What the scriptures tell us is that the faith has to be integrated at every level, every single level. There's research done by Lifeway Research several years back, and it looked at, it did research on kids that were brought up in the faith, going to church. What were the key factors in them staying Christian and going to church when they became adults? So, what are the key things that you ought to be doing if you want your kids not only to be Christians when they're kids, but to be Christians when they're adults? Okay, here are the key factors. You read the Bible at home together. You went to church together. You served at church together. You prayed together in the home, and you worshiped together. Now, do you see a common thread there? One is together, and then two is that there isn't just like church. Like, okay, we're going to go to Sunday school, and this is where you learn some Bible lessons. Like, you go to Sunday school and learn some Bible lessons, but then at home, you're reading the scriptures together. You're praying together. You're worshiping together. Now, warning. Remember, this is wisdom. So it's not to say that if you do all of those things, you are guaranteed to have a wonderful, well-balanced, amazing Christian 25-year-old. This is wisdom. This is how you flourish in the land that God has designed. But there's other factors as well. So I don't want anyone in here thinking that, Pastor, we tried all of those things and my son has walked away from the faith and so we're still praying. What did I do wrong? Sometimes you could do everything right and things still go wrong. And then likewise, maybe a humbling statement for some of you. Some of you pridefully like, oh man, my kid serves the Lord. It's great. I just did a great job. And it's like, truth be told, you didn't do any of these things right. The Lord was just gracious to your children, and the only thing you contributed to them in the faith is you gave them a great testimony of all the things they overcame and still follow the Lord. So, wisdom is not a formula. Do you understand this? You see what I'm saying? It's not do this, and you guaranteed this. However, wisdom is still really important. And so, the massive change in parenting and family life that has taken place in the last several decades deals with technology. It's fundamentally changed the way we live as human beings. And so we want to say, how do we live well? How do we live the abundant life in the midst of the digital age? The title for this series comes from a book my friend wrote, Jay Kim. He's spoken here a few times, called Analog Christian. And so some of the principles in here are taken from that and several other works that I'll mention later if you want to do some further research. But you just have to know, you've got to know, that the world changed fairly quickly. just a few decades ago, this was advanced technology. And it was because that actually is the size of a floppy disk that was the advanced version. This is the 1.44 megabyte floppy disk. Now, some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. That's fine. But some of you remember coming home and telling, like, your wife, "Hun, these things now have 1.44 megabytes. Do you know, I could store a picture on here." Okay, so from that point to now, how have things changed? Well, let's say this. I have a phone in my pocket, has 256 gigabytes, which is roughly like 197,000 floppy disk. And if we wanted to get all crazy with the stats, I just thought of this, I should have done it. Like we'd say, that's as if you'd stack floppy disk from here to the top of the Empire State Building, just in your pocket. It's crazy. It's crazy. We used to communicate through these things. Anyone have one of these? They're called beepers. Yeah, a lot of hands down. Because you admit to like your old ways, man. This is a Sony Betamax. You can't read it, but really, in really tiny writing, this is the advanced technology. I'm actually shocked it could do this. One of the key marketing things for this was that you could be watching a TV show like on Channel 2, but you also want to watch another show. And well, you got to choose. This thing would actually allow you to watch one show and record the other one on Channel 7 at the same time, so you didn't have to miss anything. It was awesome. And look how it was marketed. This is the next thing. It's the next thing. And some of you know that, like, when it came out, it really was and you were like, dude, I got to get one of these. My life would be better. So much more. I'll be whole and complete and happy. For a little bit older, some of you can thank your marriage. You can thank the cassette tape for your marriage because it was on the cassette tape that you listened to about 100 hours of love songs on the radio. And when the one that came on that you really liked came on, you'd hit record on one of these cassettes. And then you'd collect like this incredible amount, like almost near infinite number of songs stored on this device, like 10 songs. That then you'd be able to give to, this is the girl I'm trying to, when I think about you here, and then, they'd be able to play these 10 songs. Now, some of you are like, this is the weird thing. For some of you, this is like the first thing you grew up in, like with childhood with. It's like, this was it. For some of you, that's like item number 10 in a long list of audio advancement. You're like, dude, this is like new technology to me. And there's some of you who the only reason why you know this is you took a school field trip to the Museum of Natural History and they explained how this device worked. CDs were awesome. So somewhere between the cassette and the CD was like my childhood and my teen years, and CDs were just, they were legit. One, for those of you who are really into audio and things sounding good, the CDs sound great. They sound better than the MP3 file that you're listening to. They sound great. But what was so cool is like, cassette, you actually, you fast forward, and you had to guess when the one song you bought that cassette for would land. Stop. Oh, it's way ahead. Oh, I went too far. I got to go back. Oh, my gosh. But then the CD was just like track 3. Boom, boom, boom. Yes. It was awesome. It was great. Think about this. Now we have like pictures of people. And we just say, call this person. There was a time where it took you straight, 60 seconds. 1, 4, 5. You remember this? And if you messed up, which was likely, because you had to get your finger in the right slot, and then after you're 47 seconds in, did I already hit 7? Did I already hit 7? Hang up and you got to start all over. So you see how strange this is. So in a room this size, we have people from all different backgrounds, but no matter where or when you were born, this moved really, really fast. And for some of you, things might seem like, oh, this is kind of new in my life, actually. And some of you, it's like, I wasn't even born when this is around. So we have that diversity. I mean, we have people like my father-in-law, Jerry, who he remembers when he was a little boy doing smoke signals to tell his mom that he's coming home for dinner. I mean, that's how fast things change. Okay, now, jokes aside, I want to show you, just so we can illustrate how technology fundamentally changes the way we live our lives. This is a phone, for those of you who are young. And there was like one of these per house, one. And it was usually in a central location, either the living room or the kitchen. Now, let's pretend you have a 15-year-old daughter. 15-year-old daughter, okay? And there's a boy that calls. By him calling that phone, mom or dad picks up, and he's like, is Sarah there? Okay. Implicitly, in this interaction, there is an asking of approval just to merely talk to the child in the house. There is no privacy. He calls, because bring, bring, bring. Is Sarah there? Who is it? Oh, it's Tim from school. Nah, she moved. She doesn't exist anymore. Get lost. Wrong number. But if you allow this conversation to proceed, you are still approving it and you know of it. Okay? And then furthermore, Sarah comes to the phone. She doesn't get to go hide in her room and have a private phone call. This is a public conversation. The house knows the contents of this conversation. Now, some of you know that you did your best to stretch that cord out, 17 meters. You walked around the kitchen, did a lap, shut the door, and was holding it just like this on the other side. But nevertheless, it's still an approved conversation that if someone wants to go listen to, they just go up closer. Think about that. Just that. Has that fundamentally changed the way our young people are acting and interacting in regards to romantic relationships? It's radically different. It's a public conversation. It's approved of. You know the contents of it. If your son or daughter sounds sad, you can go check in on them. They're not locked away in a room with the door locked. It's a different world. So that's how the phone existed then, and now we all have this supercomputer in our phone. And here's the stats. By the age of 10, 25% of young people will carry a cell phone. By the age of 12, 75%. And by the age of 15, 95%. So this is reflective of the stats around the country, but of our church as well. This is reality. 95% 12-year-olds, 75%, and 25% at the age of 10. So they are doing this communication thing in a way that's no one has ever done before. So how do we do this? With wisdom. How do we use the scriptures to give us wisdom to address things that the scriptures didn't know anything of? So we got to begin asking, what is technology doing to us? Now, I am not going to say that technology is bad in and of itself. There's so many blessings that we have because of it. The issue comes down to, is technology serving you, or are you serving technology? Because what's taken place is a mass adoption of technology in order to make our lives better, but in reality, we find ourselves enslaved to technology. We're addicted. We are completely addicted. And that's not rhetoric, that's objectively measurable and proven. As modern Americans, we're addicted to technology. So, okay, here's a list. We got a list coming up. I'm going to give you 10 pieces of Hokmah. Now remember, this is Hokmah. It's wisdom. It's not as if you do this and you're guaranteed X, Y, Z. And you're also, because it's wisdom, feel free to disagree. This isn't like a command in Scripture. On some of these things, you'll be saying, you didn't go far enough. Some of you will be saying, whoa, that was way ridiculous. You're like Amish or something like that. That's fair, because the older I get, the more I get it. I go, oh, I see the wisdom. I see different ways of looking at things. So you don't have to agree with everything. There's going to be degrees at which you can agree to disagree, because we're dealing with Hokmah. And then also, there are some things that you may agree with, but you go, Isaac, there's no way. If I instituted that into my family, it would blow up. Sometimes you can't go from 0 to 100. You have to use wisdom and work your way there slowly, or pick 2 or 3 things. Use Hokmah, wisdom. Look at what the scriptures, the big pictures is teaching us, and say, how do we live well in light of the way God has designed the world? Okay, so these are in no particular order, except I chose probably the most controversial right out the gate, so that if anyone disagrees, they can just be angry at the start. Okay. How do we live well in the digital world? Okay, a word on passwords for married couples, for parents, and then for singles. All right. There is no reason why I should have a password-protected device that my wife doesn't have access to. I don't want to hide anything from her. She has access. I don't belong to myself. I belong to my wife, and she belongs to me. Say, where did you get that? The Bible. Now, a quick clarifying thing. There are unhealthy relationships where there's people who are possessive, and they're controlling, and there's an obsession with knowing everything. I need to see your phone. I need to see your phone. You have to use wisdom to understand this, and you need wise counsel from other people, from people that you trust, because this is Hokmah. There are situations where relationships are dysfunctional and unhealthy, possessive, abusive, and so you need Hokmah too. But all things kind of being equal, if there is a healthy relationship between a husband and wife, I don't have something that my wife doesn't have access to. I don't do it. I don't need to. She can look at everything. Now again, there's exceptions, like anniversaries, trying to hide a present. You might find a way how to secretly go about buying a present. So you guys understand this. This isn't a universal rule. It's a Hokmah thing. I don't want to have a compartmentalized version of me that exists apart from my wife. All things being equal, there's a healthy relationship, there's no abuse, obsession, control. You get people in your life that can speak into that and help you through that. But in a normal situation, I don't want to hide anything. I don't got anything. Go ahead. My life's it's super boring. Go ahead and look. I'm going to look for 2 minutes and be over this. Just looking up how many different varieties there are western fence lizards, commonly known as bluebellies. That's what it's like. It's true. This is a true story. My son and I were trying to figure it out. We're catching lizards. Okay. To the word to parents. Your child has been brought up in an age where they think it's a fundamentally inalienable right given to them by God to have privacy on their digital devices. And it's unthinkable that a parent would override that. Look, here's the thing. For all of human history, families grew up in one-room huts. There's no such thing as privacy in that situation. Now, thank God houses got bigger and the standard of living went up. But that's to say, this idea that a 12-year-old can access anything they want online, and that's just their world, and mom and dad have no right to that. That is madness. It's madness. It's absolutely madness. The internet is filled with evil, vile predators. If there is a domain where there's evil, vile predators, you don't send your kid to go navigate that landscape alone. You just don't do it. Wisdom would say, be in that person's domain, in that sphere. But remember, wisdom, so some of you don't do the whole, I have a 17-year-old kid who's had access, they've had password protect, they have all, and I heard a sermon where, boom, 0 to 100. It might blow up. Hokmah, steps, communication. The other thing is for single people, you might want to get a person that you trust, that you could just give access to, like passwords and internet history and stuff like that you trust, that, it's not like they're going to be like, what's your day look like? I saw you what'd you look at on Amazon? Again, there's all kinds of dysfunctional relationships and behaviors, but I just, generally speaking, it's good for you to have people that can hold you accountable. The internet is filled with bad stuff you don't want to be looking at. It's good that there's someone else who can hold you accountable. And so if you don't, that's not your spouse or you don't relate because you don't have kids, you're not married, just maybe find some people that you trust, because the internet's a dark place. It's a dark, dark place. Okay, number 2, Hokmah. For parents, have hard talks with your children earlier than you think you ought to. Because your frame of reference is when you were a kid. Right around the age of 14, I started seeing this, and this, so I'm going to be preemptive and have that conversation with my kid when they're 13, a year ahead of when I started getting exposed to this stuff. You've already missed it. You need to have that talk way earlier, because the world your kids are growing up in is not the world you grew up in. The average age for first viewing and usage of pornography for young people is 12 years old. 15% by the age of 10. That's heavy. That's heavy. And this isn't just like, oh, we need to have a talk about the birds and the bees. I'm talking about viewing pornography. And if you don't act and your kid's on that drug at the age of 10, 11, or 12, his or her brain is being rewired to crave that for the rest of their life. Their entire life will be affected by this. So have these conversations early. Don't let them have access to digital devices that are password protected from mom and dad and they can have it whenever they want. You're setting them up to become addicted to some of the most destructive stuff that's out there. You got to have these hard talks earlier than you think. Screens, digital devices in general. Children between the ages of 8 and 12 will on average spend 4 to 6 hours in front of a screen. So follow that. Your kids, the little ones, 4 to 6 hours a day in front of a screen. You ready for what teenagers are at? Because I just did little ones. Teenagers are at roughly 9 hours a day in front of a screen. And it's because that's partially been integrated into school and stuff like that. But just the sum total with school, education, and then at home, a phone, an iPad, a computer, 9 hours in front of a screen. If you think that that's not shaping your child, I'm telling you, you're mistaken. Incredibly mistaken. 9 hours. You're biologically wired to get addicted to this stuff, by the way. So, like for instance, if you're in a forest and you're calm and you're sitting and you have a lounge chair out and you're camping and a beautiful blue bird flies across the area, you notice it. Why? Because the blue stands out, the contrast, right? It stands out in that movement. So you're wired to notice something that stands out. If you're in a dark room and someone shines a flashlight, where does your attention go? To the light. So bright colors and lights, just the way you're biologically built, draw your attention. So what do screens do? They're taking advantage of that. This is why if you have a child, you can put on a movie, a cartoon, and you watch them go into a trance, right? Put a Pixar movie on before a 3-year-old. Baby girl. Baby. And some of you know this by experience. How's the one way you break the trance? You go and It completely, and that's not like wrong in and of itself. I'm just telling you, that's what the technology does. And we have, and again, this is wisdom. I don't want to make anyone feel guilty, but we have children who have hours and hours and hours and hours of these movies completely memorized from start to finish, because their days are being consumed with this. You know, oftentimes we get blown away as parents or grandparents because there'll be a 3-year-old with like an iPad. Look, they know how to they already figured it out. They could look at pictures. It's a flat surface, okay? And it's not hard for someone to figure out where the bright button is in the top right corner. Press that and start doing this and see what happens. And what happens when you do this? Movement. And your eyes are trained for that. You know what's harder than that, which is better for the cognitive development of your 3-year-old? Do you remember those toys where they'd give you a shape? A 3-dimensional shape, a polygon, like a pyramid, and then there's a 2-dimensional surface with the hole of a pyramid in it, and the child had to figure out how to rotate and come at the right angle to pass the shape through? That is infinitely better for your child. Don't say, oh no, but now he's learning the operating system of an iPad. He's more prepared for the future. No, he's not. The device thing is actually better for their cognitive development. You put the little pieces in. We're spending our times in front of screens, and we're wired for that stuff. So don't feel bad. This stuff is built to take advantage of you, to consume you. So seriously lower the amount of screen time your children are getting. I also know that sometimes emergency situations call for emergency means, you know? Because sometimes, like, house got to get clean, dinner isn't done, and the kids are flipping out. You have like this magic thing. You want to watch a show? Huh? You want to watch a show? Go ahead. Here's some cartoons. And the chaos. Remember, I know, got 5 of them. All of a sudden, it's chaos. Peace and harmony is in the house. So I'm not saying hear me, I'm not saying don't ever have your kids watch anything, don't ever let them watch cartoons, but seriously consider significantly reducing the amount of screen time. Use it when you have to. What most people are doing, they're outsourcing the responsibility of parenting to digital devices. You're letting an iPad do what mom and dad are supposed to be doing. Take the time to read to your kid, play with your kid, go outside, have fun. Don't outsource that, because it has an effect. Okay, social media is bad. This is really bad. When stuff started to come out, I was like a teenager, and there was like MySpace, the good old days. Okay? It was MySpace was awesome. You know, that guy Tom, he meant well. He meant well. Then you get Facebook and Instagram, and I want you to know that none of us knew better when that stuff was coming out. So it wasn't bad that we all immediately adopted it and we're checking it out all the time. And hey, son or daughter, yeah, go ahead and get a Facebook and Instagram. No, we didn't know better. It was just a fun, cool new technology. The research now is abundantly clear. It's making your kids miserable. It is poison to their soul. Now, I'm not just going to say that randomly. I want to show you some stats. This is a 10-year trend description. If you can't read it on the left, it says the percentage of female and male students who experienced persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness increasing from 2011 to 2021. Okay? So from 2011 to 2021, you're going to see female at the top, male at the bottom. For females, there was an increase from 36% to 57%. That is, they are experiencing persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And you don't need the stat to see this, right? We see it in our world. Now these stats start at 2011. Do you want to know when Instagram started? Q4 2010. And if we were to go back, there's an abundant amount of research that shows how did we get to 36%? Well, find the date the iPhone came out and when Facebook came out. And you're going to see direct rises when all of these technological advances come. Now you could say, oh, that's due to a lot of things. Yes, the rise is due to a lot of things. But the evidence is now insurmountable. One of the major reasons for this is social media usage. And the platforms are built to get you addicted. My friend Jay Kim, in his book Analog Christians, talks about how when the people were designing the user interface, they looked at how Vegas did things and how people got addicted to gambling. And so this motion, how do you refresh your news feed? Like stuff isn't random. Feel this, sadness and feelings of hopelessness. And it's more pronounced among young women and teenage girls than it is among men. It applies to both, but it's particularly targeting young women. U.S. anxiety rates. On this, it's kind of confusing, but at the top blue, you see Gen Z, and then you're going to see red millennials, Gen X in orange, and then boomers in green. So starting from 2008 to 2018, up at the top, the blue line, there is a 92% increase in Gen Z of kids dealing with anxiety. It's a 92% increase in anxiety. Now again, there's all kinds of factors for this, but the evidence is overwhelming. A big factor is social media. Now what's interesting, some of you are going to love this. What's interesting is this stat applies to everyone sort of evenly. Not evenly, but at different rates. So it's affecting Gen Z the worst. It hurts my generation, millennial, second worst. There's a 62% increase. Gen X, not that big of an increase, 18%. But boomers and above, check this out. You've received a 7% decrease. The trend has gone backwards. You're like, I don't care. You guys are doing great. And part of it is, generally speaking, boomers have an attitude of, so if you're a young person in this room, you know this. Your mom or your dad posted something on Facebook, and you're like, Mom, Dad, you can't post that on Facebook. And they're like, I don't care. I don't care what people think. If they disagree with me, they're stupid. That's dumb. Where to be disliked is a nightmare for a young person. And it's not their fault. Their brains were wired by these devices to seek out likes and approvals and retweets. So it's a big deal. Boomers, you didn't have that. You're like, man, we did through a lot more harsh stuff than that, man. I don't care if Bob's offended at my tweet. I'm going to tag him. I'm going to make sure he sees it. All right. Wisdom. I'm not going to tell you when it's age appropriate to start allowing your kids on social media. For most people, you've already passed that line, and so it's like, oh man, I don't know what to do. So this is what I'm just going to say it this, and this is absolutely a scare tactic. I'm totally trying to scare you. It's a scare tactic. Sometimes scare tactics are necessary. This stuff is poison to the soul of your children. Use Hokmah, figure out how to deal with it in your family. It's poison, especially for our young people. Especially for our young people. It's nothing good is coming from it. So if you're a parent with young children, whatever age you think they're mature enough to go into that world, my Hokmah to you is push it back. Push it back. It's not good for them. Okay, I got through all the hard stuff. Now the rest of the list is easy, positive, uplifting. Conversations. There's a book by Sherry Turkle called Reclaiming Conversation. In it, there's research that says meaningful conversation doesn't take place up until 7 minutes of kind of unmeaningful conversation, like back and forth banter. Which says meaningful conversation in your household doesn't take place until there's at least 7 minutes of conversation. Now, do you know what disrupts and presses the reset button in that 7 minutes every single time? Your digital devices, your notifications, your clicks, your rings, your text messages. It resets that. You're distracted and you pull it out and you're looking at it again. You will not have meaningful conversations up until the 7-minute mark. Now again, that's not like take your phone out and set a timer 7 minutes. That's the way it works. Just generally speaking, and you know this, like when you talk with people, it starts off like, oh yeah, how's baseball? Oh yeah, man. Hey man, I've been meaning to talk to you. You know, is this normal human interactions? So set up things in your life that aren't making you notified all the time. And if you're already one of those people who's like, this isn't true, that doesn't apply to me, I could stop whenever I want. Do you know who says I could stop whenever I want? Dinner. If you have a family with kids, do your absolute best to have dinner around the table together as a family every single night. Every single night. I know there's always exceptions. There's going to be Thursday, there's this, but do your best to make sure to have dinner as a family every single night. Put all the digital devices away at that time. Let there be a basket or something. That's where everything goes. That's where everything goes. If you want more on this type of stuff with dinner and some of the things we're talking to, there's a book called Tech Wise Family by Andy Crouch, and a lot of the principles in this are taken from that. But get a basket. At dinner, we eat together. And again, some of you have not been doing that for years, so it'll be super weird and awkward. Like we heard a sermon yesterday, we're all eating around the table. How's it going, son? Fine. Can I be excused? No. We're going to sit here, and you have to build it won't happen overnight. You have to build the habits. One trick is if you're not doing this and you have a bunch of small kids, there's this crazy trick. It's like magic. Turn off all the lights and put a couple candles in the center of the table. Because remember what light does. You're biologically wired to focus on it. So then as you're sitting around a table, at least your eyes are engaged in here. And you'd be surprised what it does. I've had numerous people try this, and they're like, dude, it works. The candle thing works. Music. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but it was normal for most families all throughout human history. Learn to sing together. Learn to sing together. Now, again, if you have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and you've never done this, and you're just like, it's family sing hour time, boys and girls. It's like not going to work. But I'm telling you this for you who have little ones or who will one day have children. Kids love to sing and they love to dance. And you have a short period of time where your kids will actually love singing and dancing with you. You have a short period of time where your kids actually think your dance moves are cool. Why? Because they could barely walk. They're toddlers. So you just have a little bit and they're like, wow. They love it. Now, let me tell you wisdom from the people who are older in this room. You've got a blip of time like this, where those babies are little and you can sing and dance and run around and have fun with them. Do not give that up for you yourself being addicted to some digital device. They're there. They want your attention. They'll dance with you. They'll play. They'll have fun. And a family who can sing together and dance together is one who will stick together. One of the easy things that you could do is at dinner time, learn a simple Christian song like the doxology, and just before you eat, everyone sing the doxology together. Families did this. Different cultures, different places, all throughout the world, throughout history, you'd have these sort of rhythms where you just sing this 60-second thing together. Space. Our houses are designed in such ways that we're communicating what is most valuable. And we're all living in an era where the living room is designed to center on one focal point. Whether you like it or not, the room was designed to center on a focal point. So much so that in new homes, if you know this, if you're in real estate, you're a realtor, most new homes are built where actually there's a hole in the center of the larger wall with an HDMI cord coming out of it. Because they know that's what people want. And so the rooms are already preset up to focus on that which is most important. The TV on the screen. And so what you need to do is to make practical decisions that will help you create a space for your family to flourish in. And I'm going to give you two quick things on this. Make your living room, or whatever common space you have, if it's like the kitchen or the living room, whatever it is, make that a place that rewards creativity and relational engagement. So, what I mean by relational engagement is have couches situated in such a way that you're looking at each other. You're not having private space where you could just hold your iPad. That you're relationally connecting to one another. If you have a TV and you're like, hey, Isaac, I'm not out of place, I'm not on board with getting the TV out of the living room or something like that. Find a way how to cover it. You know, there's like those media centers or whatever where you can put some doors over them because it's communicating something. It's communicating something. If you have young children, if you can, help them get somebody to, you could get YouTube videos. This is one era where technology can help. You can get YouTube videos teaching basic guitar or piano. So get something in their life where they create something, they show mom and dad the creativity, and then they're rewarded for creativity. If they paint something, hang it on the wall. Oh, we can't put that kid's picture on our wall, maybe on the fridge. No, put it on the wall where the TV used to be. Let them see what is most important is relational engagement and creativity, and make your center space, your space you're most in, a sacred, holy space that's dedicated to God first and second the family. Don't have it dedicated to other things. 9, rest from technology. Pretty straightforward. If you can, try to get an hour a day where there's no technology at all. Maybe one day a week and maybe a week a year. What did I say? There was laughter. Usually I said something wrong when that happens. No one's going to tell me. I'll just continue to be insecure. I don't have a lot of sleep. I'm probably saying a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. Okay, last one. Learn to read together. Set up hours in your family where just the family reads together. And that doesn't mean like one person is reading one book out loud, although I'll touch on that. That may be what that means. But hey, we're just all going to sit around the couch, and rather than watching 4 TV episodes in a row together, we're all going to read books. And maybe we could share about the contents and talk about what's going on after. Or if you have really young children, you could just do like a family reading time where mom or dad or whoever, or maybe the oldest sibling, reads 2 chapters out of a book that you're all reading together. If you can, the stats and research it's abundantly clear on this. It's just like social media. It's clear now. If you can get your children reading and loving to read, they will do better in pretty much every measurable category as they grow older. I'm talking about academics, school life, emotional health, stability, more likely to be anxious, more likely to suffer with this issue. Getting your children reading, singing, rewarded for creativity, having an emphasis on relational engagement, all of these things are going to set your family up for success. It'll make a world of difference. So, Chokmah, figure out how to integrate this stuff into your families. Figure out how to maybe talk about it with your children so that they pass it on to your grandchildren. Be thinking about it for you young parents, or be thinking about it for you soon-to-be parents or parents 5 years from now. And also, all of this stuff doesn't apply just to children or family units or parents. It all applies to you. You could be single and no kids. You're watching too much TV. You're not reading enough. You're addicted to social media. You're seeking approval. So it really does apply to everybody. But my request to every single person in this room is that you would think intentionally and critically about all these different areas and maybe take 1 or 2, 3 steps today that can start making your household better. Because what will happen is, I can't do any of that, and then you don't do any of it, right? I can't do all of it, so I don't do. Chokmah. Take some baby practical steps. Just do a few and see what happens. Now, we're going to wrap up, but probably this is one of the most important pieces. And this is especially true for those of you who have kids. When you hear all of this stuff, in addition to it sounding insurmountable, it may also feel like, yeah, if we do all of those things, let's say I go hardcore on this. We're not even going to have a TV in the house. We're going to have family reading hour. We're going to sing songs. We're going to do all of this. I just don't want my kid to be kind of weird, Because everyone else is like that. I want my kid to fit in. You are a Christian. You're supposed to be different. The world ought to look at our families and say, that's what I want. And I know the desire. You don't want your kid to be different. I just want him to be liked. Look, here's the thing. You are being shaped. Your children are being shaped. They're being discipled. They're being discipled by TV shows, movies, social media. They're being formed and shaped, and you will either allow your child and yourself to be shaped by these things, or you will put stuff in place in your life to allow you to be shaped to the image of Christ. It's active. They're trying to disciple you. So either put stuff in your life that will conform you to the image of Christ, or allow the world to conform you to the image they want you to be. Now, I know that the feeling, I want them to fit in. Look, take a look at what the world is doing. Is that what you want for your child? Is that what you want? No, I want my kid to be different. I want to be different. And I want the world to be able to look at that and say, yeah, it is kind of weird, but I think I want that for my family too. Now, the motivation for this is that it's better. Christ is better. Being like Christ is better. You don't have to worry about being approved by desiring likes and retweets. You're already accepted because of the work of Christ. You don't have to desire to buy and purchase new things because you've already been purchased with blood, the most valuable thing in the world, the blood of Christ. And you don't have to worry about being liked when you are deeply loved far more than you could ever know or imagine. You've been purchased. You are deeply loved. You are accepted on the grounds of the work of Christ. Say no to the world. It's coming to steal, kill, and destroy you. Christ offers an abundant life. Reject the world. Say yes to Christ. Figure out today how you can better conform you and your family to His image than the world. Practical steps. Chokmah. Let's stand as we take communion. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, He took bread and He said, "This is my body. It's broken for you. This is given for you." And so because of this, we remember and we can find the encouragement, empowerment, and inspiration to say yes to you, Lord, no to the world. And so, Lord, we remember what you did in order to bring us into your fold. Likewise, Jesus takes the cup, the blood of the new covenant. It's His blood poured out. We were bought with a price. We were purchased with the King's blood. It's an honor and a privilege to be at His dinner table. We get to be kids around His table. And so, Lord, we give you our allegiance and our love today. And Father, as we close, we thank you that the word you gave us to call upon you is Father. It's a family term. And we know that your Son, Jesus Christ, is called the Son. It's a family term. And so we ask that we would be children who love and serve their Heavenly Father, who seek to be conformed to the image of the elder brother, the Son, Jesus Christ. I pray that your Spirit now in turn would give everyone wisdom, this chokmah, where they can just take some steps. We can't do it all. We can't go from 0 to 100. but convict us on the areas that need improvement today. We commit to you, we love you, and now we turn into worship. In Jesus' name, amen.
Father's house, there's a place for